Okay, I'm going to move on and invite Mark Wilson, the Director of Probation Services. And again, Mark will give us some insights in terms of the role of probation services, but particularly and specifically related to pathways related to drug use.
Thank you. Great. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. As you have heard throughout your work, there's a well-documented relationship between drug use and offending behaviour, which includes crime committed while under the influence of drugs, crimes committed to obtain money for drugs, or crimes committed within the context of drug supply. These offences range from public order, road traffic, theft, burglary, violent sexual and non-sexual offending, up to including domestic violence, rape and murder. For some, an appearance before court will be once off. For others, they will have experienced periodic episodes where they have appeared irregularly before the courts. And for others, it is almost as if their entire life focus and sense of self can become enmeshed within a drug and crime culture. For some, especially women, the majority of the harm caused is often to themselves. For others, their behaviour can be highly challenging, undermining of a community's sense of safety and demanding a clear criminal justice response. When asked by the court, the probation service assesses the person to understand what has happened and to understand what in the person's life has led them to this point. We consider the offence, the impact on the victim, the factors leading to that offence, and the person's willingness and capacity to change. Where directed by the court, the probation service manages the individual subject to the court order under the conditions imposed in order to assist that person to change. Today, I will give you an overview of the work of the probation service, speak to you about the prevalence of drug and alcohol amongst the clients we work with, and outline what we see as the primary issues for the Assembly to consider. The Probation Service is an executive agency within the Department of Justice. We provide services to the courts and the wider criminal justice system through the delivery of community sanctions. We aim to create fairer and more inclusive communities where crime and its causes are effectively addressed. We are a national service. Our staff are social work trained. We work with adults and children. We provide services to the district, circuit and central criminal courts. And it's important to identify that our relationship with clients is involuntary. So people engage with us because they are directed to do so by the court or are under an order of the court. While the majority of our staff work in the community, we have staff working in all of our prisons, and we provide an in-reach service to Overstand Children Detention Campus. In support of our work, we allocate 1/3 of our budget, approximately €18 million this year, to the community and voluntary sector, which is 60 organisations throughout the country who worked with 4,500 of our clients in 2022. The majority of our funded projects work with those with problematic drug use, providing tailored psychosocial interventions in communities, working in partnership with other local services. Our funding in this area includes €2 million, which is provided directly to 18 drug treatment services throughout the country. Some of those we fund have actually spoken to the Assembly, including Coolmine, Analythi, Sale, and today both Solace and Cork Alliance. In the context of the crime for which the person is committed, it is the aim of the probation service to establish positive relationships with the client in order to supervise, guide and assist them to promote their successful social integration and using control where necessary. We achieve this through the work of our staff, our work with our funded projects, across sectoral partnerships involving statutory and the community and voluntary sector, and implementing the National Drug Strategy and through regional drugs task forces. In 2021, we published a research report on the prevalence of alcohol and drug use amongst the probation client group. The survey was designed and implemented in partnership with the Central Statistics Office, emphasising the importance of data-informed decision-making. And as you can see from the slide, we experience 81% of our clients who have some form of drug or alcohol misuse. The most at-risk group is 25 to 34 age group, and at 50% of that group, there is a direct relationship between their crime and substance misuse. Other key findings from the research report demonstrate the drug of choice being used from the highest down, the preferences for male and female, the level of participants who have ever had a conviction for possession, and the level of engagement with relevant intervention services at the point of referral to us. I'd also refer you to a further research report we published in 2021 looking at the mental health of those who we work with in the probation service. That report by Dr. Christina Power found that 40% of adults on probation supervision presented with symptoms of at least one mental health problem. 50% of this group also presented with either an alcohol and drug misuse problem, difficult family relationships, and or accommodation instability. And in total, the report found there were significant unmet psychological and psychiatric needs amongst our client group. There's a further report that I'll draw your attention to, which is the high-level task force to consider the mental health and addiction issues of those coming in contact with the criminal justice system. That report, prepared jointly by the Department of Justice and the Department of Health, the committee was chaired by Kathleen Lynch, former Minister of State for Mental Health, and it makes a broad set of important recommendations relevant to the Assembly's work. Harmful drug use is a national problem. While harmful drugs can be present amongst any of our family and friends and communities, you have heard repeatedly that it is disproportionately present within areas of high deprivation. We've also heard, or also I should say we should remain conscious of the additional specific needs of women, children, and members of ethnic minorities. In relation to the issues that I've identified there within the slide, on the first, on healthcare-led prevention, the probation service fully endorses the continuing approach, which is health-led. In terms of a diversion from the criminal justice system, yes, we should divert people from entering the criminal justice system, but for those that do, we're conscious of the extra stigma attached to having a criminal conviction, but there are options open to the court in dealing with an individual which enables them not to proceed to convict, but does influence the ability of that person to engage with services. And certainly we heard accounts of that earlier today. So we would encourage diversion from the criminal justice system, diversion from conviction, and diversion from the use of imprisonment at the earliest point to engage with the individual. Community sanctions, in terms of what the probation service does, the probation service can and does work with this target group. We do so effectively, and we should maximize the use of community sanctions in order to assist people engage with treatment. A probation order in the district court is not a conviction, so a person can be placed under the supervision of the probation service and not receive a conviction, and that is an important point to emphasize. In terms of building capacity for the necessary services, the answer to the challenges faced in this area, as you've heard repeatedly said, is much broader than addiction treatment and requires a whole of government response. The lack of suitable accommodation in particular to support those in recovery remains a critical problem. The need to strengthen psychosocial outreach, peer support and aftercare services are all still relevant. In terms of overcoming societal barriers, as I've said, addiction brings stigmatization, but also the additionality of having a criminal conviction further compounds that person's life opportunities, and it is something which we should be encouraged to listen to those with lived experience, identify those obstacles in front of them, and to move forward.
Just 1 minute, Mark, please.
Thank you. Enhancing our use of collective data, if you like, we have shared clients. We have the mental health services, addiction services, we have homeless services, we have Gardaí, prison service, probation services, and it is the collective data which allows us to look at the number of shared clients that we have and how best we can work together to inform policy and interventions to lead to better outcomes. I think in an earlier presentation, Dr. Keenan, who's here with us, referenced 23,000 people in the addiction services. Between what Karen McCaffrey has and what I have, we manage a similar number of people in a given year. There is a large level of overlap, and we have much to learn in aligning our services and sharing our data to inform better policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Seconds. Can I just, before I go to your tables, to ask you to reflect and think about some questions? Assistant Commissioner, Justin, you've made it very clear and consistent, as I said, at your first presentation. Your members since have made it very clear, as you expressed on the slide, your grave concerns around legalisation. Can I just clarify, because it's hanging in my head, and I'm sure in many of the members, is that still the same position around any opposition or grave concern around decriminalisation? So if we were to legislate for decriminalisation, does that still hold true as an Garda position?
Well, look, I suppose our position, I've made it clear twice, I think. Whatever the legislation is, or whatever the government decide to do and the legislators enact, it's our job to enforce those rules, so we'll do that. So, I mean, it's really clear that the government policy, and Ben Ryan from the Department of Justice spoke about it on the first day, the government policy is around implementing the health diversion programme, and Tony spoke about it in detail. So look, I mean, if that comes in, we will police that and we will work with it. But I suppose the real concerns that I have spoken about are all around legalisation, Paul. So it's all around, the key thing for us is that we retain the ability to seize drugs remain illegal, and we retain our powers to stop and search, which Ben Ryan mentioned on the first day, and Tony has referenced there that drugs will remain illegal here as they do in Portugal. So I hope that clarifies it, Paul.
Certainly helps a great deal, yeah, I think it does, because you've made it very clear in the legalisation, and of course I understand you'll implement what's government policy, as we all will, but I think you've clarified your specific concerns expressed so far was the issue of legalisation.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks, and sorry to put you on the spot on that one. Can I put the second person on the spot before I go to your tables? Just on the issue of, I know we can go to the Department of Justice on this one later, but Tony, you said one of the key enablers of the health diversion programme is the legislation. Mm-hmm. From your perspective, where you're sitting right now, where is that at? I know you're not the only person who can answer this, but if I can just ask you.
Yeah, it's being worked on. It's pretty much all I can say at the moment. It's definitely a priority. It's a priority in the programme for government, and I'm aware that at ministerial level it is a priority to get this done. For my part, we are working within the National Drug Strategy, which takes us up to 2025, and we have a responsibility at SIG5 to push this forward and get this done. So we need to do it within the life of this drug strategy, ideally.
Thank you, Tony. You're very clear. And I'm sorry just to hold on this one, because I think it's really important. It's been hanging from the first meeting. I know we had David here from the Department of Justice and Jim from the Department of Health. Can either of you make any comment where that is at? Because I'm still confused where it's at. Jim?
We just need to get a roving mic down.
Sorry, apologies. Give me a chance. That's why we're getting the mic. I did ask the last time of Ben, where is it at? And he answered as best he could, but I'm not sure. It sounds like a priority.
Yeah, thank you. So just to be clear, first of all, we look to implement the health diversion programme on an administrative basis. So that we just do it within the current legal situation. It was identified that would be problematic in terms of the position of the Gardaí referring people to the system. So then we considered amending the Misuse of Drug Act, and we did a lot of work to see what would be required there. There were some issues associated with that. So the proposal now on the table is that the Department of Justice would put in place a power, an enabling power, to have a diversion programme that might be put in place, that might be recommended by the Minister for Health or any other government department. And under that enabling legislation, the Gardaí could then participate and referred people for a diversion. Now, that could be to do with mental health. In this case, it's to do with drug addiction. So we're looking at an enabling power, and that's been under consideration with the Department of Justice as to how that will be put in place.
Okay, Jim. Can I appreciate it? Can I go to Dave Keogh, he's senior official in the Department of Justice? Where, from your perspective, David, and I appreciate you're a civil servant and we take our priorities from government and policy.
Well, just to reiterate what Jim said there, initially it was with the Department of Health trying to be introduced through the Misuse of Drug Act. That was changed to it just wasn't feasible, so the inter-departmental group agreed to proceed with criminal justice legislation to the Department of Justice, through us, so it's with us. The DOJ, the Department of Justice, has been trying to progress this since last year, and we obtained government approval earlier this year to draft legislation to facilitate such a scheme. The initial intention was to include this in the police, security and community safety bill, but ultimately that was just too far advanced, so we had to deviate from that. And the current position is that suitable legislation, a suitable legislative vehicle is being sought where this proposal can be included. To date, the Department of Justice is committed to a large number of pieces of legislation already, so it's not possible to displace that other legislation. However, it will be included in the bill as soon as an opportunity presents itself, as soon as an opportunity arises. But we are actively, it is a priority, we're actively looking for a piece of legislation that we can include in that.
Okay, David, and I really appreciate you're the senior official working through this, and as I said, I'm well aware we take our guidance and policy from government, but I just would express as chair of this assembly, and I'm sure reflecting the members, it just doesn't seem a priority. It doesn't seem anywhere near, and we really, if we're really going to be coming back with recommendations, if there has been something in the pipeline for the last year, and it, when will it happen? We're not too sure. And I'm, David, not critical of yourself. I'm pointing this at politicians to really step up if something is so serious it gets urgent priority. Thank you. Okay, completely off piste for the chairman. So can I just maybe give you time at your tables to have a reflection, pose some questions together, and we'll come back to the panellists in 7 or 8 minutes. Thank you.